So hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. So I'm Lizzie, I'm the chair of the North West PRCA NextGen. So we relaunched a couple of months ago and this is our second event that we've had so far. So this month is Stress Awareness Month. And at the PRCA, we're hosting quite a few different events around stress, just because it's a really important topic, especially at the moment with everything going on in the world. So today, we're delighted to be joined by Imelda McQuaid. So Imelda has her own mindfulness business, Mindful by Nature. So we're just going to be asking her some more questions about it, and feel free to ask any questions in the chat box as we go along, and we could get those questions answered for you. And then at the end of the event, we're going to do a short bit of mindfulness practice, and the event will probably last for about half an hour. So hi Imelda, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, no problem. It's lovely to have you. So could you tell us a bit more about what mindfulness is?
Yeah, well, mindfulness, in a very brief description, is consciously paying attention to the present moment. So just making a choice that you're bringing your attention to the here and now in this moment. And that might sound like, oh, well, that's not a big deal, or that's a bit fluffy, whichever kind of way you might think. But there was a study done of 30,000 people by Harvard University. And of those people, 47% were found to not be paying attention to their present moment. Mm-hmm. Which, if you think about that, it means for almost 50% of your life, shall we say, you're not paying attention to the present, which means you're either living in the past or you're living in the future. And that kind of just seems a little bit crazy, really. And within that study, they found that of those people that were not living in the present, they were less happy. And so I suppose the idea of bringing your attention to the present is very much about engaging your senses, because if we stop to become mindful, if we engage, like, what can we see, what can we smell, what can we hear, it means we're here and now. We can't be in the present and be in the past, or we can't be in the present and be in the future, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And just the way we're conditioned, we have a tendency to, and just think about this now as I say it, we have a tendency to be thinking about what's happened before, and that might be either we're looking back reminiscing over good times and good things and wishing things could be like that, or we're ruminating over how badly something went and, oh, I wish I'd have done it better, I wish I'd have said this, I wish I'd have done that. Or we're in the future thinking, and especially with lockdown and stuff like that and restrictions even, oh, I can't wait to do this. So fantasizing about the things we can do in the future, or maybe having a sense of dread about what might happen in the future. And we spend so much of our energy focusing on one of those things, the past or the future, we forget to be here and now and notice what's going on for us here. So mindfulness is a skill as well. Like it's something that we can all attain, and it's a skill that we all would have had in childhood, up to the age of about 6. I think we're very naturally mindful because we don't have the ability to analyze stuff, but then we get that greater capacity in our brain to begin to analyze, and that's when we start to lose our ability to be more mindful, really. Mm-hmm. And so it's a skill that we can practice, and the more that you practice, the easier it becomes and the more benefit you get from it, really.
Great. That's brilliant. So when and why did you set up your business?
Oh, that's a really big question, really. So my business is called Mindful by Nature, as you said. So my business is very much about practicing mindfulness, but utilizing nature as well. And so I strive to offer all my services in nature wherever possible, because I think that, well, nature is just such a hugely powerful resource that we have. And it actually has very similar benefits to mindfulness in the sense that it can create us to become a lot calmer, to feel a lot happier. So I set my business up towards the later end of last year. And ultimately, I had a bit of an epiphany, I suppose, in the sense of I began to practice mindfulness again after not having practiced it for a couple of years. And the kind of impact that it had on me was really, you know, really profound for me, that it brought me to a sense of calm so quickly. And so the effects felt so powerful that I felt, you know what, maybe I should actually share this with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I first kind of really discovered the benefits of mindfulness and meditation about 9 years ago, when I went on a cycle tour around India and Nepal for 3 months. And I probably didn't know at the time, but unconsciously I was like running away from the fact that my mum was ill. And then when I was in India, really noisy, chaotic place on my bicycle, I found out about this 10-day meditation course where it was a silent retreat. And I thought, yeah, that sounds good. I could do it 10 days of silence. So I went to this course, knowing nothing about it, never heard of it before. And it was a Vipassana meditation course where for the first 9 days, you meditated for about 9-10 hours every day. You weren't allowed to talk to anybody, have eye contact with anyone, read, write, listen to music. There was nothing at all. So you just had the meditations. You were just very much with yourself. And probably one of the most challenging but liberating experiences that I ever really had. So following on from that, I kind of maintained quite a regular practice, really.
Mm.
And then, but then about 3 years ago, my dad died really suddenly, really unexpectedly, just completely out of the blue. And it was just about a month before my first child was born. And so when that happened, I just could not practice mindfulness. I couldn't be alone, you know, I couldn't sit with my thoughts. It was just too painful and too raw. And I just couldn't, you know, I just couldn't do it. I avoided it completely. But I was really fortunate and managed to acquire an allotment plot just about 3 days before my son was born. And I'd been on the waiting list for years. So I wasn't able to use mindfulness, but I threw myself into the allotment, digging in the dirt and planting seeds and digging up weeds and just, you know, spend as much time there as possible, really. And that kind of seen me through that period. And then, and I was never able to go back to the meditation or mindfulness, never be able to get back to it. And then I had a second child just almost a year ago. And when I had him, it just really threw up all the emotions and pain of my father's loss that I was trying to avoid and suppress. It just really forced me to relive it in a way. And so I was really struggling emotionally and really feeling, you know, quite challenged. And my partner says, why don't you try some mindfulness again? And when he'd suggested it before, it used to just make me really mad. So this time I thought, no, you know what, I need to do something. Can't carry on like this. Something needs to change. So began to practice some self-compassion practices, and then moving on to various other mindfulness practices. And like I say, it was just so powerful. Just improved my life so much that I thought, right, do you know what? I can't be the only person that has experienced these kinds of stresses and can benefit from this, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, so decided to set up the business from there, really.
Brilliant. That's really interesting.
Long-winded answer, but it just gives.
So how can we introduce mindfulness to our working day?
There's absolutely loads of ways to introduce mindfulness to your day. So we have a tendency to kind of rush from job to job, task to task, home to work. And I mean, things are a little bit more blurred now, probably with working from home. So you're kind of living in your workspace. So just taking to begin with, I think, to make space between your home life and your working day, in the sense of taking a pause. So as you go to begin your day, just taking a pause, taking a few deep breaths to kind of almost create a separation between home and work. Or even if you've traveled on public transport, for example, you might be rushing around, fighting parking or whatever. So then when you arrive at work, maybe taking a few deep breaths, setting your intention for the day. If you're anything like me, the first thing I'll do is put the kettle on to make a cup of tea. So while the kettle's boiling, you could be just taking some time to take a few deep breaths and really just focusing on your breath and bringing yourself into the present moment. So trying to let go of what kind of worries you might have had up until this point, or thoughts of what you have to do, and just really focusing on here and now. So it could be that you're listening to the sound of the kettle boiling, or you're just focusing on your breath, but just taking a few moments out. As well, I think mindfulness, like we work on the computer a lot nowadays, we're on the, you know, screen time, and we're quite well, you know, versed in taking breaks from the screen. So maybe, you know, coinciding that with when you take a screen break, actually take a bit of time out for a bit of mindfulness. So it doesn't have to be a lengthy period of time, but just really consciously, you know, paying attention to the present moment. So consciously taking a breath and taking a few deep breaths and breathing into your tummy. Because when we get caught up in what we're doing, sometimes we can unknowingly maybe even hold our breath very slightly or breathe a little bit more shallowly. So if we actually bring our attention onto the breath, we realize, you know, oh, you know, I'm not really breathing very well. So taking a few deep breaths and really allowing the breath to move all the way into your tummy a few times can just kind of bring you back to that present moment, really.
So it's something that everyone can fit into the day. It's, you know, you could literally take a few
yeah.
minutes just to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be lengthy, extended periods of time. And another, I mean, there's endless ways that you can bring it into your day. I mean, in your lunch break, going out for a mindful walk around the block. It doesn't have to be far. It doesn't have to be high speed or really slow, but just going out for a brief walk and really engaging your senses as you do that. So being aware of your feet on the floor, being aware of how you feel as your legs take each step and your arms maybe swinging by your side. And what can you hear? Can you hear any birds singing or dogs barking? You know, what can you see? Trying to engage your vision in terms of what's the most far away thing you can see, what's the thing you can see most close up, but really trying to just engage your senses, you know, whereas sometimes we'll go out and we'll be rushing to the shop or rushing to the car and we don't necessarily notice what's going on around us. So really just trying to engage your senses, because when you're engaging your senses, you're in the present moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think mindfulness is something that we need now more than ever before, obviously with everything going on in the world?
Yeah, I really do. You know, I think like pre-pandemic, I think it was a really important thing that we needed anyway, because, you know, all the statistics show that kind of stress is kind of at its highest, and, you know, depression, anxiety are really, really increasing things. So, you know, I can only imagine that, you know, after this pandemic kind of ends or as it eases as we go on, you know, those statistics are going to get higher and higher. Just if you imagine now yourself, like if you think about a stressful situation, and, you know, bring a stressful situation to your mind and just notice how that makes you feel. And so for me, I might notice that, you know, if I bring something stressful to mind, I kind of feel like I clench my gut a little bit.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm kind of not breathing as fully as maybe I would have done. And we have a tendency, when we're stressed, we have a tendency to breathe from our chest as opposed to our stomach. And that kind of forces us into like fight or flight mode, really, you know, fight or freeze mode. So we're kind of in survival. So when we're living in this kind of more stressful place, we react more, and we kind of go from reaction to reaction to reaction, and without really giving things as much thought as maybe we would like to, or having as much clarity of mind. Because I think when we're stressed, we can feel quite overwhelmed, and there's just so much stuff going around in your mind. And especially within work, you might think of so much to do, but have not enough time to do it. And there's all this stuff floating around in your head about what you have to do. So all your energy is directed at thinking about all this stuff. Whereas if we, you know, practice a little bit of mindfulness, if you literally just stop what you're doing, take a step back and take a few deep breaths, and then observe your thoughts. So observe, actually, how am I feeling here and now in this moment? And it just removes us a little bit from that kind of, you know, wash machine kind of thoughts going on in your head. And then from that, you can proceed with whatever you need to do from a bit of a calmer place. But I think it's something that we have to keep practicing quite regularly. And when we do that, if we do stop and step back and kind of observe what's going on, it also allows us to see more clearly what we need to do, and maybe that we might need support. So we might need to reach out for a bit of help, or even just having a chat with a friend or a cup of tea or something to kind of allow us a bit of a break from something, if that makes sense. So mindfulness really allows us to create a space between your thoughts and your actions. So it's allowing you to respond more logically and rationally, rather than just reacting with, you know, a knee-jerk reaction, if we, you know, if you imagine. So yeah, absolutely. And so most definitely stress stress can be reduced by practicing mindfulness. You know, it's there's so much scientific kind of research and evidence out there to back that up as well. And yeah, and it also leads to, practicing mindfulness can also lead to being much more productive and much more, because we're having a lot more focus on what we're doing. So if you imagine you're spending all your energy thinking about what you're doing now. So if you've got a task to do now and you're focusing all your energy on it and all your attention, you're going to do a better job than if you're spreading your attention between 5 different things, let's say, or if you're trying to complete a task while actually thinking about what happened last night or dreaming about what's going to happen in the future. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, definitely.
The idea really, I suppose, when, you know, a lot of very typical mindfulness or meditation, the idea that you're bringing your attention to the present moment, you're reducing all those distractions that are there. So you're removing those distractions. So very often, if you're doing like a seated practice, you'd be asked to maybe close your eyes or lower your gaze and sit in a quiet space. And although that isn't essential, the reason for it is it reduces all those distractions straight away. So it allows you kind of to be in a better place to focus on the here and now, really. So
yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I think probably a lot of us are probably guilty of, you know, not stopping and taking a step back and things like that, because obviously it's a busy industry that we work in and that kind of thing. So that could be really helpful. If there are, sorry,
I was just going to say, when we're in that kind of mode, it becomes so familiar that you kind of don't even realize. So sometimes you're stressed when you don't even realize that you're stressed. We become so accustomed to working like that. And I think we've become accustomed to thinking we should be busy all the time, and we should be checking our social media all the time, and we should be, you know, we're not really a society that has much free time, just kind of being on our own, in our own company, without some kind of distraction. You know, not many people will sit, if people have free time now, generally they'll pick up their phone and start to scroll, or, you know, turn on a box set or whatever it might be. So we become really accustomed to that. And that's actually, when we become so accustomed to that and it's so familiar, it can sometimes be a bit hard to break away from that. So actually taking time out to do mindfulness can be quite challenging and quite difficult, because you're like, well, I'm not used to being quiet like this in my own thoughts. And so your body kind of tries to challenge you almost to say, oh, don't be doing that, get back to being busy. And, you know, so as I said before, mindfulness is a skill. Like with any skill that we've ever probably learned, like riding a bike, driving a car, you have to practice and you have to dedicate time to it, and you have to overcome that kind of really challenging time when it's really struggling and there's so much things to remember. But then the more that you actually practice it, the more it kind of becomes part of your nature, if you like. So if you're a driver, when you first start to learn to drive, like mirror signal maneuver, how will I remember all that stuff? And now you drive and you don't even think about it, you just get in and go and don't really. Mindfulness is very similar in that sense.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. And if there are any questions from anyone joining us today, please just feel free to type it into the chat box and we can ask them. Shall we do the mindfulness practice? Oh, sorry, there's a question in from Rhiannon. What is the difference between mindfulness and meditation? Oh, also, can you practice mindfulness with another person? Great question. Thank you, Rhiannon.
Thanks, Rhiannon, for your question. So just that second question, because it's most recent, can you practice mindfulness with another person? Of course. I mean, it's very much something you can do by yourself, but it's also something you can do in a group or with any number of people. And actually, I mean, the benefits, if you're doing it, the benefits are great either way. But sometimes if you're doing it with a group, actually the energy that you kind of create together can be really supportive and actually really enhance those kind of the benefit that you get from it, really. And I think that's probably just because of that kind of mutual support almost that you're having, because it's less, maybe it's more difficult to, you know, get up and finish your practice early, shall I say, if you're there with a group of other people. But just another thing, going on to the other question, what's the difference in mindfulness and meditation? So they're often, those words are often kind of interlinked and used kind of interchangeably. So I was kind of always taught that meditation is like the pillar that mindfulness rests upon. So they're so similar to each other in a lot of ways, but like mindfulness, for example, is something that we can do every day in all different scenarios. So we can drink a cup of tea mindfully. So by engaging all your senses with that cup of tea, you can really be mindful. You could brush your teeth mindfully. So again, like just becoming aware of the smells, the taste, the sounds. So mindfulness is something that can be really incorporated into every activity that you do each day. And the difference that I would kind of see with meditation is the definition of meditation, if you like, is to become familiar with. So if we're meditating in the sense that you sit quietly, you close your eyes, you are in a quiet place where there's, you know, few distractions, and you're just focusing on your breath, because the breath is used as an anchor because we have it all the time. You know, we're breathing 24/7, even though we don't notice half the time that we're breathing. It's just there, we just do it. So if you're just focusing on your breathing and you're sitting nice and quiet in your meditation, thoughts are going to keep coming up. We keep, you know, thoughts will arise all the time because we have any number of thousands of thoughts per day. And the idea is, in terms of both mindfulness and meditation, is when those thoughts arise, you just notice them and let them go. You don't get attached to them, and you don't attach any judgment to them. So in the sense that, let's say you're, even when you're just waiting on the kettle to boil, you're going to have 10 thoughts that come through your head in that short space of time. But you can notice that, oh yeah, that's a thought. Yeah, there's another thought. There's another thought. But you don't attach any judgment, and you don't attach any story to them. You just notice them and let them go. And so in the terms of meditation and becoming familiar with, thoughts will arise and you notice them and you let them go, but you'll begin to notice things that are coming up for you in that kind of moment. And that allows you to become more familiar with yourself, more familiar with how you actually feeling here and now in this moment, like why are these emotions present? And therefore that allows you to maybe after your practice to go ahead and maybe act on some of those things, if you know what I mean. So if there's things that you need to do or changes you need to make, you're better placed to kind of move forward and kind of act on that, because you're more aware of how you actually feel rather than it being clouded by lots of past and future thoughts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. Shall we, I'm just conscious of time. Shall we, we've got about 6 minutes left. Shall we do some mindfulness practice, if that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I might do, just to make it a little bit more comfortable, so that, because obviously I can't see anyone else's faces other than yours, so it feels a bit slightly disconcerting if I'm sitting here kind of leading the practice. So I might just put on a virtual background. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. And I'll turn off my video.
And then I'll have to move away, actually, won't I? Okay, so I'm just going to lead a very short practice, and I'm going to begin with the little bell, and it will finish with the little ring of a bell as well. Okay.
Yeah, brilliant.
So if you're comfortable to close your eyes, or just lower your gaze if you prefer. Place your feet flat on the floor and rest your hands on your lap. And try to sit up straight, not so that you're stiff, but that you've kind of got good alert posture. And now just take a few deep breaths. Really try to breathe through your nose, breathing all the way into your tummy without forcing it. And as you're doing that, just try to become aware of your posture. Like, how are your shoulders feeling? Have you got any tension anywhere? If you feel like you've got maybe tension in your shoulders or tension in your jaw, just try to release it as you breathe out. And now allow your breathing just to return to its normal state. Whatever that is, whatever way your breath wants to fall into its natural rhythm. And just focus your attention on where you can feel your breath most. So it might be that you feel it most in your tummy or in your chest. It might be that you notice your belly rise and fall. Or it could be that you're noticing the air entering your nostrils and leaving through your mouth. And just try to keep your attention on your breath as it comes and goes. And your mind will wander because it's completely normal. Our mind is used to wandering. So just each time that you notice your mind has wandered, just bring your attention gently back to the breath. And try not to get frustrated with that, but instead kind of feel grateful that you've noticed that your mind has wandered. And now just moving your attention away from the breath for a moment. Just watch every thought come and go. So as thoughts come and go, just notice, are they a worry? Is it a fear? Is it an anxiety? Is it a hope? Just notice thoughts as they come by. But don't attach any story to them. Don't attach any judgment to them. Just notice what they are and just acknowledge there's a thought and just let it go. And again, when your mind wanders off and gets lost in a story with one of the thoughts, just acknowledge that and bring your attention back to the breath. The breath is your anchor that's with you all the time. And if it helps, maybe as you breathe in, you can say the word in just quietly to yourself and repeat the word out as you breathe out. And if you find yourself getting carried away in your thoughts, just observe where your mind has went to without judgment. And then simply return again to your breath. Each time you bring your attention back to your breath, think of it as a little win. You've been mindful. By noticing that your mind has wandered and bringing it back, you're being mindful. Again, just keeping your attention on your breath. And when thoughts come and go, just remind yourself that they are just thoughts. Thoughts are not facts. Now, just for a few moments, just sit for a moment, just becoming aware of where you are now, how you're feeling in this present moment. Really try to tune into the sensations of your body and just how you feel here and now in this one moment. Because it's this one moment that is the only one that really exists. And then when I ring the bell, I'd like you to just gradually open your eyes, just whenever you're ready. And then just proceed with your day gently. Reminding yourself to show kindness and compassion to yourself when you can. I'd also just very quickly like to read a little poem. The poetry is often a great way of kind of sharing mindfulness and sharing kind of the meaning of it. So this is a poem called I Worried. I'm going to be honest, I can't remember who wrote this now off the top, which is really awful, but I will let you know. So I worried a lot. Will the garden grow? Will the rivers flow in the right direction? Will the earth turn as it was taught? And if not, how shall I correct it? Was I right? Was I wrong? Will I be forgiven? Can I do better? Will I ever be able to sing? Even the sparrows can do it. And I am, well, hopeless. Is my eyesight fading, or am I just imagining it? Am I going to get rheumatism, lockjaw, dementia? Finally, I saw that worrying had come to nothing and gave it up. And I took my old body and I went out into the morning and sang.
That was brilliant. Thank you for that. I feel like I'm going to have a really chilled afternoon now.
It's the point of mindfulness isn't to actually relax, but it's a really, really fantastic side effect. And it's simply because I could stay here and talk all day now, but it's simply because when you reduce those distractions, the brain waves start to kind of slow down a little bit. So it allows you kind of just, it reduces your cortisol levels. It just reduces kind of your blood pressure, reduces, slows down your breathing. So it does leave you feeling a lot more chilled going on to your day. So
definitely, yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I found it really interesting and just great to find out a bit more about what you do, a bit more about mindfulness and how we can bring it into our day. I never thought before, that you could just do it in a couple of minutes. So I think that's really helpful and would have really helped people who, do have a busy schedule. So yeah, it's been really brilliant. So thank you very much.
Lovely to meet you. Thanks for.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining.